Yes, people, welcome back to the First 11. This is the United and Player Focus. We're going to be talking about the one and only Bruno Fernandes with the assist tonight. Rachel's been working really hard on this, like really hard the last 2 days. She's going to be looking at the strengths and the weaknesses of Bruno's game, his individual game. Maybe a little touch on the players around him when it comes to things like passing, vision. Maybe we'll look at some of that. But Rachel's put this together. It's great. It's incredible. She spent a lot of time on it. Please get your questions in, your comments. We will read them out in between slides. Danny's here because if you know Danny, devil in the details, you know he can add things all the time. He's incredible what he does, as well as Rachel. So Rachel, should we get into it?
Yeah. Here we go. So today we want to speak about all of Bruno's great strengths, what he's brought to Manchester United since he's arrived, and some of his weaknesses, which tend to frustrate a lot of fans. Why those weaknesses can sometimes happen, because sometimes it's not just Bruno's fault. Sometimes it's team contributions, movement, etc. So we want to go into that. And yeah, we'll just go through like the main sort of attributes that he has, and why he's so good at it, and why it's such a big problem for opposition defenders and midfielders, just opposition teams in general. And yeah, we'll just go through it step by step, and obviously with the comments and that. If you disagree with anything, we'd love to, hear what you got to, read what you've got to say. So first part is Bruno's shooting. As you know, he scores many goals. He's got fantastic shooting technique, and he scored so many goals for Manchester United in key moments as well for us. So we're going to start off with his shooting technique and why it's so important. So with Bruno Fernandes, he tends to find great pockets of space in between the midfield and the defense. And when he gets into these areas, usually his first sort of instinct is to try and shoot. He's got great shooting technique. The ball tends to move when he shoots. He uses the outside of his boot quite often as well. And he scores fantastic long-range shots, even at Sporting Lisbon, for Portugal, and for Manchester United. So this is an example of it for Sporting Lisbon. Goes into the middle of the goal. Goalkeeper has no chance because the shot goes just underneath the crossbar. Fantastic shot. And you can see where he picks up the ball as well. It's in an area where it's very difficult for defenders to just come out and sort of confront him. It pulls, defenders out of position, and then his teammates can actually run in behind. You can see like his teammate right there. They're looking for those sort of moments where he could thread the ball through. But this time he goes for the shot. So yeah, this is the first slide. So for Manchester United, Bruno tends to operate in sort of half space areas, which for those who don't know, it's between sort of the wide areas and the central areas. It's very difficult for centre-backs, full-backs, and central defensive midfielders to actually pick him up, because if they do, they tend to come out of position that gives space to his teammates. So it's so important that he operates in these areas. And the reason why Bruno thrives in these areas is because he prefers, unlike strikers, to actually strike the ball in wider areas. He tends to go across the goal as well. So in this situation, this is a ridiculously good goal, by the way.
Yeah, it was a great goal.
Yeah, this one's against Everton. Really great goal. And you can see this is the area he tends to pick it up in. He does it more so on the left side, because we tend to play down the left side. So he does find a lot of space in those areas, but he can still do it on the right, which is seen here. Sort of goes across the goalkeeper. Some people will argue that the goalkeeper should have done better, but it's still a very good strike.
It's an amazing goal.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Very good goal.
The difficult thing as well, once the shot gets to a certain height very quickly, keepers can't do anything about it. Can't do nothing about it. And that's got a whip on it as well. That was a beautiful goal.
It was so nice to watch, wasn't it, live?
It's great. It was great to watch. It's one of those goals that when you look back on his Manchester United career, it will be in there. It will be in there. It's a great goal, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great goal. So this one is Bruno combining with Marcus Rashford on the left side. Again, Bruno prefers the left side because he gets to shoot on his right foot across goal, outside of his right boot as well. So you can see Bruno's actually he's just behind Marcus Rashford in line with him. And what he does is he actually runs inside originally, and then he comes to the outside, and he ends up in this situation here.
Yeah.
And he does a fantastic finish to get us 2-1 up. But what's really important is that Bruno does this quite a lot. He does like to get into these positions. And Marcus Rashford, he's like got 3 players on him because Marcus Rashford is a threat in these areas. Bruno knows that, and that's why he takes up the position that he does. Because originally he is going inside, and he chooses to come to the outside because he knows the inside is actually congested. So he knew he'll get space on this side, and that's why he takes the shot here.
Just to add to this, I remember this game vividly.
Oh.
So I think about 5 or 7 minutes prior to this, he made the same overlapping run, but he was on the outside of Rashford the entire time. So Rashford, Rashford doesn't always use the overlap.
Yeah.
So when he comes inside, Rashford sees him. So this time when he moved on the outside, Rashford actually saw him, was like, all right, I have to play it this time round. And that's where Bruno's really, really smart, because he didn't just do the same run again. He's like, let me come inside first, then I'll go outside, and then Rashford will definitely play it to me. And just very quickly on his shooting technique. His shooting technique is a little bit wild. And all of those shots, and even this one, this finish, they're difficult finishes to execute.
Yeah.
Which sort of sums Bruno up. He's excellent at doing difficult techniques. And it's actually quite impressive that he's actually got these type of goals in his Man United catalogue already. He's only been there for 18 months or whatever it is.
Is this the Mata Donny build up? This goal?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
it is.
This is probably the best team goal I've seen all season.
Yeah, it was a really nice goal. Definitely, I really enjoyed this goal. But it just sums up Bruno really, because Bruno has really intelligent movement, which we'll go into. And a lot of people don't see it. A lot of people don't realize how important it is that he does it. He does this kind of movement. And it's so important for how we build up. It's also important for how we finish and how we've scored so many goals in those sort of areas. Bruno's key to it. If Bruno's not playing, and people notice this, when Bruno doesn't play, our attack doesn't look as good. There's a reason for that. The runs that he makes, the spaces that he opens up, and he exploits as well. Because our players like to come inside, and Bruno moves into those areas that they vacated. All these little things that he does, they're so important. This is just a great strike. This is against Everton last season when I think it was his second game for us. First game was against Watford, wasn't it? The 0-0. This is his first full game. And it's a great strike. It's a good strike because it actually moves. If you look at I know the line's not great, but it actually comes outside and then goes inside again. It's a very good shot. And even though the goalkeeper probably should have done better, the fact that it moves so much, and the fact that probably the goalkeeper didn't expect him to shoot so quickly when he picked up the ball as well. That's why the goalkeeper didn't save it, and why it looked like he should have done better, but it's very difficult to actually save those kind of shots. So again, Bruno just doing Bruno things.
Because he hit it so unexpectedly, and it's off target for most. Like the most of the trajectory is actually off target. It comes in at the right moment.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Bruno's shooting. We know he scores a lot of goals, and this is just part of the reason why. And we're going to go into some of the more key reasons why as well. And this is obviously Bruno as a penalty taker, the hop, the infamous hop.
Have you guys tried this technique? It's not as easy.
No, I haven't tried it.
Yeah,
no,
I have tried it. Yeah,
I've tried it recently. It's not as easy as it looks. It throws goalkeepers off, but it's actually to be accurate with that technique is actually quite hard.
But the thing is, even if you send the goalkeeper the wrong way, it doesn't have to go into the corner. But Bruno does actually get it into the side netting quite often, which is really impressive. But if the goalkeeper goes the wrong way, it doesn't matter if it goes right in the corner. To
be fair, I don't think he even needs to practice them in training anymore. He seems to get enough practice on the pitch. He's taken so many of them. You know what I mean? No, it's just one of those things, isn't it? You just practice and practice and practice, and you lock it down. I mean, some people are, when it comes to taking penalties, they've already decided before they've walked up to the spot. Some people like to assess the keeper. I think he's one of these guys that he's already picked his spot before he's walked up. I think he's one of these guys who just kind of, I'm gonna go this side. I will allow myself a bit of time if I need to change my mind. But it's just the technique he's got down, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. Very good penalty taker. And I think it's underrated that he's a good penalty taker. I know a lot of people call him Penandes, but we've seen it just yesterday in the Champions League. It's not easy to score penalties on a regular basis, especially in like crucial moments where we might not be winning and it could get us a point or 3 points. I think people need to sort of calm down with the Penandes thing. It's actually a very important thing that we haven't had that for a while.
This is the thing. People, they take it for granted. But then, if you remember last season when Rashford and Martial were missing him,
And Pogba as well.
now you
Pogba
care about
missed it, yeah.
penalties. But when someone
Exactly.
scores them, he's Fernandez. Like, please, it's football
Yeah.
fans for you.
Yeah, exactly. So the next part is about his movement and positioning. And again, this is something that people really do underestimate with Bruno. So in this clip, he's actually making a blindside run, something that our front three do not do, by the way, not often enough anyway. This is something that's really important. If you can see where Bruno is, he's in between the two centre backs. Or is it fullback and centre back? Either way, yeah, it's fullback and centre back. He's in between the two defenders. Again, very difficult. He's made the run, and one of the defenders is actually playing him on side, so he's fine here. And he's found this space, and Cavani plays a through ball to him. This is against Leicester, and he scores this goal. Bruno does these runs quite often. He does try to make these runs, but sometimes our players don't find them. We know the issue with our midfielders especially, but this time it falls to Cavani. But sometimes our players just run with it, and it gives people a chance to actually close them down. But Cavani finds the pass here. Bruno's made a great run and leads to us scoring a goal. This is his movement is something that our front three should be looking at and actually doing more often, and we don't see that enough. It's a bit of a problem, I think. This one here I want to speak about because people talk about Manchester United not having patterns of play. Well, this is actually part of a pattern of play that we do quite often. And the widest you ever see Rashford is actually around the halfway line. Because what happens is Luke Shaw tends to come inside into the half space in our half. And Marcus Rashford goes to the touchline and he gets the ball wide. And because Luke Shaw's made that run, he drags the wingers with him. And it gives a free pass from, say, Harry Maguire or Matic to actually pass it into him. But because Real Sociedad are actually playing a high line here, Bruno, who usually goes into the space vacated by Rashford, is actually making a run in behind here because Real Sociedad's line is quite high. And this is our first goal against them in the first leg. So Rashford gets the ball, sees Bruno's made the run, he plays the ball over the top, and Bruno gets to score.
Can I just add to this as well? So Rashford has, I want to say, about 4 to 5 assists identical to this. This ball over the top when a team is squeezing high up the pitch because we can't play through midfield. We don't have the quality at times. So this ball is an intelligent ball and an intelligent pattern of play. And you pointed out before how Bruno likes to operate in a half space. Well, that run is in the half space. It's
Exactly.
very, very difficult. Once Rashford's come wide, that he's got 2 players attracted to him. And look at that. You see the separation as well between the lines. You've got the back four there, that large gap. Bruno's made that run from deep. But once a player makes that run in that space, it's hard to live with. But we've scored this goal quite a few times this season, actually.
Yeah. And it does come down to, as we said, like the pattern of play that we have on the left side. It's something that we don't execute on the right side often because we don't have the players for it. It's really as simple as that because Luke Shaw's better on the ball. He's more intelligent than Aaron Wan-Bissaka. So he gets to do those sort of runs that help Rashford get the ball in this area. Rashford's much better at doing these kind of balls than, say, Greenwood or Daniel James. And Bruno, again, likes to... He does like to run in the half space on the right side, but because we don't play on the right side, he doesn't do it on the right side so often. So, and also he's right-footed. So when he does get the ball in these areas, even if the line's deeper, he will want to come in and try and shoot or try and get a ball towards the back post. But again, our front three don't tend to make the back post runs. So he usually just shoots in those situations. So it's something that we do need to work on as a team. But we know what the patterns are on the left side and why they're not really used on the right side.
Well, it's also a quality issue as well, isn't it?
Mm.
But imagine that on the right side, but Jadon Sancho instead of Daniel James. The patterns would work.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess with that as well, we don't know how... I'm not a big fan of AWB on the ball. I'm not. I don't think he will make the intelligent runs often enough. Like, he'd have to be told constantly to sort of do it. Obviously, it's hard to judge him when we don't have a right winger that he can actually combine with and make those sort of runs for. So obviously we can reserve judgment there. But I think right back might be an issue later on when we start to see how AWB develops and if he does develop into the sort of player we need him to be.
I'm sure we'll do a player focus on AWB.
I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
I know you would. But I agree with you. I agree with you. The partnership on the right-hand side, it's hard for us to really judge the team, if you like, when we don't really have a right winger. It's not AWB's game going forwards, really. Yeah, so yeah, that is why we play down the left hand side and problems with the midfield. Again, when we do
Yeah.
player focuses on the other players, this will all come together.
Yeah, definitely. So this one here is the Man United versus Real Sociedad home leg. Obviously, we're already 4-0 up, but again, Bruno's operating in the same sort of area. We can all see that the Real Sociedad players are actually ball watching here, which is really, really poor, because even though Bruno's movement, this next part is very subtle, so you see it here, Daniel James actually progressed the ball close to the box, but Bruno still has this space around him. And he knows that he has this space around him, by the way. He's not just walking there and hoping for the best. He knows, and he does this often. And it keeps him in an area where when he picks up the ball, again, he can go for that shot because he'll get it onto his right foot. There's so much space here. This is why players need to actually watch what he does, watch his runs, because this is where he's really dangerous. And he can do anything, by the way. If Daniel James gives him the ball here, which he does, you can play it towards the right side. Obviously, Greenwood's actually quite narrow here. Again,
Yep.
Issue with our front three. Greenwood should be wider. But there are options when he picks up there should be options when he picks up the ball here, because it's a dangerous area to pick up the ball. So, but Bruno finds these spaces all the time. And people, sometimes they don't find him. Sometimes the ball in isn't good enough. Sometimes even when he gets the ball, sometimes he does things that he shouldn't be doing. But getting the ball into those areas is important in itself. And he does this all the time.
Yep, I agree.
Again, so this situation here, Marcus Rashford's actually come centrally. And again, an issue that we have with our front three, Rashford's in the central area, Greenwood's in the central area,
Yeah.
Luke Shaw isn't actually wide. There's a massive space, and Bruno Fernandes is the one that goes there. He comes more to the left side, and he picks up the ball. So much space. This is in the recent 0-0 against Chelsea. But he picks up the ball in so much space here. And again, it's so dangerous because if he gets the ball onto his right foot, he can shoot. If players make the correct runs, he can play it in behind. He can, link up with our players. It's perfect. Like, this is where Bruno Fernandes operates and why he's so dangerous. This one's really interesting as well, actually, because in this clip, Fred passes the ball into Rashford, who's coming to a central area, and again you see Bruno Fernandes. He goes on to the left. So any area that Rashford tends to vacate, Bruno Fernandes actually steps into that area. He does it often. And again, getting onto his right foot, shooting, picking up space, letting players progress with the ball or progress with the play. And basically it gives us options on that side. Because what would end up happening is if Bruno doesn't do that and he's in a central area, the area becomes too congested. And we see it often, sometimes our players are occupying the same spaces. They're stepping on each other's toes. It's really annoying to watch. And we don't do anything. It's so easy to defend against. If Bruno doesn't make these movements, it's even easier for us even easier for the opposition, to defend against us. Sometimes it's why we struggle against low blocks, because players aren't moving. Players aren't exploiting spaces, not finding little areas where they can sort of drag players out of position. And yeah, Bruno does it really well.
Yeah, far too often players show for the ball because it's the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, they always want the ball to feet.
Come short, pop it to someone who's close, and they've got no other move to go to. It's like playing chess poorly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's literally what they do. They'll still close the space they need to operate in. Really poor at times.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So this image here is a bit fuzzy, but again, this is an area where Bruno likes to pick up space. It's between the defense and the midfield. Picks up these areas. Players play the ball through to him. Line breaking passes, by the way, which again our midfielders don't do enough. It's again another massive frustration when people speak about things breaking down in transition, which happens with us a lot. It literally comes down to the fact that Bruno Fernandes has gone into a really good position to get the ball. He can do anything here. If he receives the ball, he can turn, he can play it wide, he can run at defenders, he can watch the runs into the half spaces. If he doesn't get that ball, that doesn't happen, clearly. And a lot of the time, our midfielders don't provide that ball into him. So that's why a lot of our attacks break down, especially when Bruno picks up a position like this where there's so much space. It's so important because a centre-back will go up towards him, try and close him down. That's a centre-back out of position. That means a player can run in behind. It means you can sort of play a 1-2 off. Like if Martial is sort of in line with the centre-back sort of thing, if Bruno flicks the ball onto him, and makes the run in behind, centre backs come out. There's so much space. And then Martial will be able to play it through to him. 1-2, bang, goal scoring opportunity. Again, our players don't do it enough. We don't find those passes enough. Sometimes the pass execution is poor. Sometimes it is actually more often than not. The passing execution is really poor. It's really that simple. That's why people get so frustrated when they watch us.
Well, it's also why Bruno ends up deep at times. So
Yeah.
if that ball didn't go in, and I believe that's Matic, if he holds that, and it happens often where he doesn't play that ball, what does Bruno do next? He comes closer towards the ball so he can receive it square, and it's comfortable for the opposition because they can see him.
Yep.
That spot is so dangerous.
Yeah.
That's
all the best players do it. All the best players find those spaces.
Because, often people gas players who run with the ball and draw 3 or 4 players into them, which is impressive. But he's causing a problem for 4 players with movement off the ball.
Exactly.
Like, that's special, honestly.
Exactly.
So special.
And this is what I mean when we speak about our front three. How often do you see our front three get into positions where they're a problem for a clump of opposition players? It doesn't happen enough.
Not off the ball, no. On the ball.
Off the ball, yeah.
Martial
On the ball,
and Rashford are great, but off the ball, no.
So this one here is Bruno actually playing 1-2 with Paul Pogba. Paul Pogba plays the ball into him. Oh, no, it's not the 1-2. It's when Paul Pogba plays the ball into him, and Bruno's got 3 players trying to close him down. This is against Spurs. And watch what he does. Does a nice little turn. Literally takes out those 3 players with this turn, by the way. Because if you see it here, they're all going towards him. All of them watching him. One turn, gets into a bit of space and plays the ball through to Anthony Martial. Anthony Martial gets closed down very quickly by Eric Dyer, to be fair. But again, plays the ball through. Good execution. Martial has a chance on goal. Good block from Eric Dyer. But this is the sort of thing that Bruno Fernandes does that no one else in our team really does. It's so important. And again, he finds the spaces in between the midfield and the defense. These kind of positions are really, really important. And can you think of anyone else in our team that actually does this? Can't think of any, can we?
Well, Jesse Lingard used to, but when he has the ball, that's the problem.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Off the ball, he was great, but on the ball,
yeah, his off the ball movement was fantastic. Yeah, I agree. So yeah, Bruno Fernandes, movement, positioning on the pitch, fantastic. So now we're going to go on to his passing. Bruno Fernandes and his passing. So we know that Bruno Fernandes plays very direct. He usually goes for the riskiest pass that you can think of. So in this picture, we want to see, we look at, there's five options really that he can pass to. You've got Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Telles are in the wide areas. Really, like Telles and Aaron Wan-Bissaka, no one's really with them. So that's the easy pass. It's the easiest pass because no one's with them, especially Aaron Wan-Bissaka. You can play it through here. He doesn't go for them.
You could hit Greenwood, the switch as well.
Yeah,
and take out the entire team. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you've got Mason Greenwood's a bit on his heels here. He should actually be trying to make the run into the half space here, and that's a through ball for Mason Greenwood. He doesn't do it. So what does Bruno do? He goes for the pass that has to drop right on the penalty spot, and he executes it, by the way. So you see Martial and Daniel James there in the center, already making runs. They know Bruno Fernandes is going to go for this ball, by the way. And Bruno Fernandes hits the ball perfectly. And Daniel James gets a header on goal. Probably, he should have scored, really, but it goes straight towards the keeper. Again, who else does this in our team? Then not many, if any, basically, do this. Bruno Fernandes will always make... Bruno Fernandes.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, Paul Pogba, obviously, he's out at the moment. So Bruno Fernandes is literally the only one in our squad who's fit enough to go and do this and who's intelligent enough to do it and will take that risk. And that's why he's so important. Because if Bruno Fernandes isn't there, if we were to play a midfield 3, for example, of Matic, Fred, McTominay, calamity. That's the only word I could use to describe the 3 of them. Because they don't make these passes. And if they try to make it, who knows where the ball would end up. This is the problem. Bruno Fernandes makes these passes. And these passes are important, by the way, when it comes to risk taking. If you don't have a risk taker, if you don't have someone that makes these passes, you end up with a very stale way of attacking, a very easy to defend against way of attacking. So Bruno Fernandes, this is why he's so important, makes the pass, good execution, and unfortunately Daniel James doesn't score the goal. Again, Bruno Fernandes against Manchester City. This is when we won 2-0. Again, you got Marcus Rashford. Probably should be making a run actually down the left, try and get the ball in behind there, but he's not. It's a simple pass to him. Doesn't really offer too much because you're better off going for the pass to Martial, and he does make it. Outside of his boot, Martial gets into a decent area, allows us to progress the ball up the pitch, and lets our players actually make the runs up the pitch as well. So Bruno Fernandes, it doesn't matter if he's using the outside of his boot or the laces or anything. Bruno Fernandes will always go for these passes. He doesn't care because he's very confident using the outside of his boot as well. We saw it a couple of times in this game actually when he played one to Marcus Rashford. He was on the left side. Marcus Rashford made a run up down the right, outside of the boot. He doesn't care what side of the boot he actually uses. He's very, very good at it. And yeah, he makes a pass down to Martial. Again, it relieves pressure as well. When you progress the ball into these areas and Martial picks up the ball, and it allows our whole team to push up the pitch, by the way. And then considering how we were pressing, particularly in the first 15 minutes in this game and towards the end of the half, what you end up finding is that if you progress the ball into these areas, even if you lose the ball, your whole team is pushed up the pitch a bit more. So you're not constantly, there's no gaps between your midfield and your attack, or with Bruno and like the double pivot. Your whole team can push up and squeeze the pitch a bit more. And we did this quite well in the Manchester City game. We squeezed the pitch, we were very compact, and it made it very difficult for Manchester City to actually play through us. So it was really good in this game. And again, yeah, we're talking about Bruno Fernandes. He does actually make a lot of good passes, like long passes as well. He looks up, he sees a player running, and he will try and execute it. So this one here is to Marcus Rashford, makes a very good run in behind in a central area, picks up the ball, sees it. Like Bruno Fernandes actually has very good vision. Sometimes he doesn't execute it well, but he does see the pass. He does see the play. And that's really important in itself because some players just don't see it. And that's really frustrating. When you can see the pass, when you're watching games and you're saying to yourself, you know, Matic make the pass here, McTominay make the pass here, Fred make the pass here, and they don't do it. How much does it annoy you when you're watching the game? When it's fair, it's not simple, but it's sort of basic for a midfield player to be able to find those kind of passes, and you don't see it enough from our midfielders. Really frustrating. So this bit, this when I watched this video, it really did make me laugh, and I remember being really annoyed about it in the game. It's the 0-0 against Liverpool at Anfield, and this is the first couple of minutes into the game. So this one here, Bruno Fernandes gets the ball, and the only pass he can make, by the way, is to Rashford, because Pogba is actually our our right winger in this game. You can see Paul Pogba in the image. He's actually very central. There's actually no option on the right side. So we're very narrow. And Bruno Fernandes should be making a very simple ground pass to Rashford and probably just try and make a run behind. I think it's Fabinho who's actually trying to confront him. So Fabinho, if Bruno Fernandes plays a pass to Rashford here, Rashford can actually play the ball back to him. And instead of playing the ground pass, he actually lifts it for no reason. There is no reason. Honestly, I was trying to work it out. Why would he play the ball in the air? Why would he lift it? There is no reason for it whatsoever. You play the ground pass, you make the run. Hopefully Rashford gets the ball back to you. And you can see the gap between Henderson and Fabinho as well, right? It's a pretty big gap because Fabinho is confronting Bruno. If he makes the pass on the ground to Rashford, makes the run in behind, Rashford plays a 1-2 with him, who knows what can happen at that point. But Bruno, for some reason, decided to lift it. And this is something that we see quite a bit with Bruno as well. When he can make a pass that's very simple, he tries to complicate it. And this is something that a lot of people see and they get really frustrated with. And I understand it because this kind of thing annoys me as well. But his pros outweigh his cons for me. Like, I would rather have someone that is constantly a threat in the final third, who's constantly making these chances, who's constantly risking, if it means he gives the ball away in stupid areas occasionally, because he is our 10, and we still have players behind him who can sort of deal with us losing possession. So I think Bruno Fernandes, as much as things like this really frustrate me, like this makes me want to throw things at my TV. But, you know, for me, Bruno's pros may outweigh his cons.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does do this a lot. He does like lift the ball in strange areas where you're thinking, why lift it? It takes off the pace of the ball. And this ball actually goes to Andy Robertson, by the way. This ball goes over Rashford to Andy Robertson. So it's not like he lifted it to Rashford and Rashford couldn't control it. It was literally just yeah, it was just not on target. Basically, it was really, it was a really bad pass. But it was like when you look back on it, it is actually quite amusing, to be fair.
Is
So
this
what?
the? Oh, you got another one. Okay,
Oh,
cool.
so yeah, go on.
No, keep going, keep going, keep going.
So this is the Manchester City one. We actually discussed this the other day. It was really interesting. This one here. So a lot of people were really annoyed at Bruno for this pass, the lofted pass, because Martial's making a good run, and you can see him like Marcus Rashford is further towards the left, and then Martial's in between Rashford and Bruno, and Martial's looking to make that run in behind, and Bruno's option is to lift it. So people will be frustrated with this, but there is a reason for why he does this, and it's literally because the defenders around him are actually quite close together. And Martial's, I don't know who it is that's actually trying to run with Martial, but he's goal side of Martial sort of thing. So it's quite difficult to just play the ball in and have three players that can actually body Martial. So what in this situation, what Rashford should be doing, he should be actually more wide, or he can sort of run in behind. He's doing neither because he's actually on his heels, and this is really frustrating because there's three players around Martial, or four players, and then you've got like six players there, sort of around Bruno. So if Marcus Rashford actually goes a little bit wider, what he does is he drags one of the players with him, and that opens up more space for Bruno to actually play a grounded pass to Martial. But because Rashford's positioning here, he's not actually adding anything. He's not doing anything in his position.
No,
It's
he's,
not
he's
useful.
taking away.
Exactly. He's
He's
not playing
actually
the same
taking-
place as Martial, and he's not actually doing anything because he's on his heels. He's not making a run. He's he's just standing there at this point. This is really poor from Rashford. And again, it's not just Rashford who does this, by the way. Martial does it sometimes. Greenwood does it sometimes. It's a common theme with our front three.
As opposed to a Cavani, right? Because a Cavani, a lot of the time, Cavani does pull wide. Even if he's central, he'll pull wide and drag a defender out, or he'll make the run. He'll just be a nuisance. You never see him stood still. But yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. Yeah.
But another thing with Cavani actually going wide, you don't really want Cavani in wide areas. You want him in the central areas.
Exactly.
But because our inside forwards tend to go into central areas, they don't attack half spaces the way Bruno does, not often enough. And basically, because they come too central, you find sometimes you get Rashford, Greenwood, and say Martial literally in this area here.
On top of each other, yeah.
Yes, on top of each other. It's really bad. Really, really bad. And it's so easy to defend against. This is why we struggle against low blocks, because how easy is it to have the three forwards just in this area? You have Luke Shaw or Aaron Wan-Bissaka in the wide areas, and basically they're crossing into the box, but everyone can see what our front three are doing. They're in front of them, so they're not making runs. Usually they're on their heels as well. They're not making runs behind them. They're not in between the centre backs. They're just sort of just standing there, and that's why it's easy to defend against, because they're not attacking the right areas. They're not exploiting spaces. They're just standing there, and that's one of the issues we have in this one here. Again, it seems like it's Bruno's fault. And Bruno probably could have tried the ground pass. He could have let the ball go across his body and try and get it to Daniel James. That's another option as well. But he wants to get the ball through to Martial because he can see Martial's literally making the run. So he tries to lift it. But again, with the lifted pass, like it's more difficult for Martial to control when he's running, because he can try and control it, but he might not be able to control it correctly to get the ball out of his feet and try and, make the shot. If he plays it on the ground, Martial has more options and like better options to try and go across goal, gets the ball under control a lot better. So in this sort of graphic, you can sort of say, oh, it's Bruno's fault for trying a silly pass. But actually, there are reasons why sometimes Bruno makes the risky pass, because sometimes it is the better option to try and go that way. And sometimes he doesn't have many options because of the way our front three moves at times. Yeah.
Oh, before you move on, just on Bruno, because I have mixed feelings about his passing. I actually think Bruno's game has another level to go to. Far too often for me, he either plays it safe. So when you look at his passing success rate in individual games, when it's high, sort of over 80%, because he's usually below 80%, which is sort of low for a player in his position. But when it's high in the 80s or sort of low 80s, that's the best he sort of gets to. He doesn't have the big assist. He doesn't create a lot of chances. So he needs more balance in his game. And one of the problems with Bruno is he actually decides what he's going to do with the ball before he gets it. So even he's got division, but when the pitch changes, sometimes he loses concentration, doesn't execute the pass that he needs to. So I did a quick comparison. I'll just read out the stats. quickly for you guys. It's just passing stats. So I compared Bruno to Mason Mount, Kevin De Bruyne, and James Maddison, right? So when you look at the part, one thing I like to look at as well is just accurate percentages, success rates, because the system doesn't matter, the formation doesn't matter, the amount of attempts that the player tries something doesn't matter. It just percentages just tell you how effective and how efficient a player is when it comes to certain metrics.
Yeah.
So when we look at accurate passes, excuse me, so he's at 76%. So that's below Mason. That's 10% below Mason Mount, who's at 86. About 3% off Kevin De Bruyne, who's at 79, and he's 7% lower than James Maddison. So he's at the bottom of that list. And when I go through this comparison and I toggle just to find out who's at the top of the list and who's at the bottom of these four, again, when it comes to accurate forward passes, again, Bruno's at the bottom at 64%. Kevin De Bruyne is next with 71. James Maddison's similar, and Mason Mount's way above, almost 20% higher. He's 18% higher at 82%. So his passing accuracy actually isn't elite. It's just because he's got such great movement, such great vision, and he's got ability. When he executes it, it's going to create a big chance. Even when you look at his accurate back passes, which is sort of nothing, he's still at the bottom with these guys. They're all in the 90s, but he's last again because he's just not an efficient passer. And one thing you can do, I'm using the Y Scout platform, by the way, just for anyone who's wondering. And one thing I like, they've got some metrics for key passes and different categories for them. So they've got something called smart passes, which is usually a pass that breaks the lines and puts an attacker in an advanced situation to shoot on goal or create. And again, when I toggle it, he always ends up near the bottom. So with these four anyway. So accurate passes into the final third, Bruno's last. Again, when we're looking at accurate smart passes, bear with me, because it's shifting. We're looking at accurate smart passes. So he's in third place, right? But again, he's never in, just with these four players, Mount, Kevin De Bruyne, James Maddison, he's never in the top two. He's always bottom, or he's always second to last. And for every metric, accurate through passes even, he's in third place. James Maddison's actually worse, but again, he's below Kevin De Bruyne. He's below Mason Mount. When you look at accurate passes into the penalty area, again, he's bottom. He's last, and that's where, for me, when I'm looking at these statistics, like the way Y Scout just categorizes different key passes, and you can go into it and you see he's not the most efficient player at these passes. It says to me, actually, he's got another level to go. When he gets into his prime, if he can just get a little 6-7% out of his game more, you think his outputs are crazy. Now, I mean, look at his outputs in terms of creativity, big chances created, assists. It's already elite. He's got another level to go to. Like, he's not going to get worse. And I've already seen it. I don't know if you guys have noticed it. His game management has got better. It's just missing that extra. It's that game management, playing it safe, but not too safe. Like knowing when to be expansive and do stuff that he does here.
Risk assessment.
Yeah, it's just exactly.
Danny, let me ask you both a question. If you had a better ball playing DM or midfielder behind him that made those passes quicker, crisper into his feet, if you had better movement from the front three, do you expect those numbers to go up?
Yeah, I do.
I expect the numbers to go up, but what would happen is it would still somewhat expose him when he's not being efficient. So like I said, when you look at somebody's success rates, the attempts don't actually matter. It's like you can give, what's his name, Antonio Valencia, go make him play for Barcelona. His conversion rate isn't going to get better. So, because he plays for West Ham, okay, he doesn't get as much chance as he would for a top team. So his goal output's going to be capped. He may increase it at a top team, but his conversion rate will probably be the same within 2-3%. It's not going to increase much.
Yeah, that's fair. Do you know what it is as well? That's one of the reasons why I disagree with this notion that better coaching will make you this elite player. Like, if you don't have certain fundamentals, it doesn't matter how much coaching you have. Sometimes you're just limited as a player. And this is not in reference to Bruno Fernandes in particular, but there's other players in our team. When we speak about managers coming in and say Nagelsmann or Poch coming in and people automatically thinking, oh, they're going to become elite players. that's not going to happen. Some players just have limitations. Some players have a ceiling, and this is what people need to get through their heads, really. Like Bruno Fernandes does have another level to go up. Whether he gets there or not remains to be seen. We know that he has the potential to do it. Whether he will or not is a different thing. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't always matter about sort of the coaching. It's about whether it's about the players around him. It's about him actually working on it, calming himself down at times as well, because he does get frustrated. And when he's frustrated, sometimes the passes he plays, it actually affects the whole game. When he gets frustrated, he tends to rush things. If we're 0-0 and we've got 5 minutes left of the game, he will try and go for those passes, but his frustration and maybe a lack of concentration at times does affect that. So, and that can come down to multiple things: decision making on the pitch. It can come down to refereeing decisions that annoy him. It can come down to players frustrating him around him. There are so many factors when it comes to anything. When it comes to football players, it's not just one thing. It's not just black and white. There are so many layers to it. And again, that's what people need to understand when it comes to football in general. It's more than just one thing or two things. There's usually a multitude of things that affect a player's performance on the pitch.
And sort of back to Indiana's original question, Bruno's outputs are good enough for any elite team. So he doesn't actually have to get better. If the players around him get better, he can keep at the level he's at, and his output would matter more because everybody else is doing more. Like if Martial wasn't half the player he was last season, we'd be a better team for it. But he's not the same player as he was last year. So I think Bruno has another level to go to, but actually, like his level isn't gonna the bigger concern is actually not Bruno, to be honest with you. I'm just happy knowing that if we keep him, he will go to another level. It'll be amazing to see. But ultimately, in terms of United's overall fortunes, the rest of the team has to get to his level.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're going to discuss his work rate and pressing, and this is going to address a few of the issues that people have with the way Bruno presses. When people speak about him pressing beyond the front three, how they get annoyed, we're going to discuss sort of when it's appropriate for him to do that and when it isn't, because there are situations where him pressing beyond sort of the front three is actually okay, and sometimes it isn't. So we're going to go through that and just sort of discuss his work rate, because his work rate is incredible as well. So in this image, Harry Maguire plays a really poor pass towards Bruno. You can see in this image here, actually, there's 3 players that are actually in front of Bruno. But Maguire plays this pass anyway. Attempted line-breaking pass, but it was actually a really poor decision from Harry Maguire to do this. But anyway, they get the ball, and they sort of play to the right, well, to their right side towards Alex Telles. You can see where Bruno is here. He's seen that the pass has been cut out, and he actually runs here. And he actually helps out the defense. Marcus Rashford you can see where Marcus Rashford is. Obviously, he's actually in line with Bruno here. If you see in this image, he's sort of in line with him. But look at where Bruno is and look where Rashford is. So Bruno's ran all the way back. And this is really good from him because Alex Telles is actually cutting out the passing line for when there's an overlap from the fullback. So Bruno's job is literally to stop the passing inside. Really important that Bruno does this, by the way, because if he doesn't, and you see the position of Marcus Rashford, there's 2 options. There's the number 4 here in the center of the pitch. That's a free option, free in the midfield. There's one where Matic is, who's like sort of on the shoulder. Play it in, player 1-2, anything can happen there. And there's also a player, I think is that Greenwood? That's on the near side. And then there's Rashford, there's a player in between the 2 of them who will also make a run into that space. It's a huge space, by the way. So there's 2 players running in, and then you've got a player that's on Matic there. If Bruno doesn't cut out this passing line, then it's a free pass to any of those 3 players. Really important, because Marcus Rashford hasn't actually tracked back here. And this is something that's happened quite a lot, again, with our forwards. It's been better, actually, in the last few weeks. But throughout the season, we've seen sometimes Marcus Rashford and, say, Greenwood haven't tracked back the way they should. And Bruno is someone that constantly fills in those spaces. And Bruno's very good at closing down players, by the way. He's very good at cutting out passing lines. And this is why what he does is so important for the team. This one here is against Manchester City. This is something I wanted to discuss. This is a team thing, by the way. So for those who don't think that we get coached, this is actually a defensive style of play that people really need to have a look at. So you can see there's Bruno, who's in orange. And then you've got McTominay and Fred. There's a triangle in the middle of the midfield. And we're allowing Manchester City just to play up from the back. So Ederson's actually played the ball to John Stones. John Stones has played it to Ruben Diaz, and Ruben Diaz is about to pass it into Rodri. And as soon as he plays the pass into Rodri, Bruno Fernandes closes him down and presses him. And you can see our whole team shifts towards that side. So you see McTominay and Fred here. You can see they're both looking at it, and they've both shifted to that side. So they're in the central area here, and here they're shifted. Again, this is really important. If Bruno Fernandes does not do this, by the way, so you see Martial, he's on this side. Bruno Fernandes is in the middle, going towards Rodri. So when Rodri picks up the ball, Bruno forces him to actually play the ball first time. So this means that he forces him to play it towards Zinchenko. If Bruno Fernandes does not press properly, Rodri can actually go. Well, Rodri passes back to Ruben Diaz, and Ruben Diaz has to play it to Zinchenko. If he doesn't press properly, Ruben Diaz actually has an option to play it back to John Stones. If we've shifted to that side and he's played it to John Stones, there's a massive space on the other side of the pitch. So what Bruno Fernandes does when he presses is really important. He knows, and the whole team knows that he's going to do this, by the way, because Fred and McTominay have both shifted to that side before Ruben Diaz has actually made that pass. So this is a team thing. They know what to do. It's better to have Zinchenko on the ball, who's not as good on the ball, than to have, say, John Stones on the ball, driving forward, because there's spaces that can be exploited. So again, it's really important. This is how we defend as a team from the front. Coach,
can I just say, I love this example, because the last time I did a breakdown, honestly, identical to this, just further up the pitch, it was against Southampton. For one of Mason Greenwood's chances, actually, that he missed. Identical to this. Bruno Fernandes presses. His body shape, it's a suggestion. When your body shape is like that and you cut off that ball into central midfield, you're encouraging that player to go wide. And as you've pointed out, because we're compact and we've shifted over, as soon as that ball goes wide, you either have to play it down the line, and if you dare come into central midfield, you've already circled Fred and McTominay there. If that ball gets played in the central midfield, you see it often with McTominay and Fred. This is where they win the ball back most.
Yeah, and also, by the way, this also feeds into our defensive style of play. When we play against teams like Manchester City, we want the ball in wider areas. We want them to get the ball into wide areas so that when they come towards the box, not to the byline, but towards the box, we want them to cross the ball into the box, because none of their front players are going to beat Maguire in the air. Defensive style of play. It's coached, by the way. So it's important. This is how we defend against teams like Manchester City, who don't have an aerial threat. You want them to get the ball into the box towards Gabriel Jesus, because he's not going to win the ball in the air against Maguire. And this is what we do often against these kinds of teams.
Can I just point out as well, sorry, Rachel, just another thing, speaking about our defensive style. We try to do this all the time. We don't just concede a low block and drop into our box and put 11 men on the edge of the box. Everyone low block, low block, low block. No.
It's mid.
When we can, we will press high up the pitch. This is effectively a trap. Go out wide. You're going to have you either have to go down the line where somebody's going to be at the backside of the player that's out on the touchline anyway. And if you dare come in central midfield, Fred and McTominay are bulldogs, and that's where they win that's where they get the ball back most. So this is actually a key part of how we win the ball back and how we actually counter-attack.
Yeah. And in big games, this is why we play McFred, by the way. We know the limitations as players, by the way. If we play Matic in this scenario, Matic isn't a bulldog sort of player. He's not a pit bull. He's not going to run after. He tries to intercept the passing line, prevent the ball from getting to the key players. But he's not as quick off the mark. So sometimes it just doesn't work. The reason why you play McTominay and Fred is because they, if KDB gets the ball, if Gundogan gets the ball in advanced areas, they're going to be closed down instantly. Again, it's forcing them into the areas that they don't want to be in, and where we want them to be in, and how we can defend against them easier. That's how teams set up defensively anyway. It's not just look at the back four. Are the back four good defenders? Cool. That's how you defend. It's not like that. Defending is actually a team thing. It's not just a back four and maybe a defensive midfielder. It's a team thing. It's closing down certain spaces, being compact. We were excellent at being compact in this game. We were really good at it because we actually maintained discipline throughout the whole game. Bruno came deeper a lot, helped out the midfield a lot. They were very, very good. So,
Rachel, what you've just explained, our first defender in that shot is Bruno. So we're defending from the front. Danny, that's what it is. So what Danny's explained is showing them wide, because out wide isn't your danger zone. right? You want the opposition. If the opposition are going to have the ball, show them wide. You're not forcing it as such, but your body shape tells them which way they want to play the ball to keep the ball.
Yeah.
So that way you've made them make a decision, basically.
Yeah.
Just by your body
passes.
shape, show them wide. It's the same thing you would do. Anybody who's ever played football and have played in defence, you stand side on to show them wide. You don't want them to come on the inside of you if you're a right back, to your left to show them in towards the goal. You want to show them wide, because that's not the danger zone. Get them away from danger. You can reset, as you showed with your clip. The midfielders can reset and shift over. It's defending from the front. He is our first defender.
Yeah.
And one other thing, very quickly before we move on to the next slide, just count the blades of grass from the back four. I can see Wan Bissaka, I can see Lindelof. That's 1, 2, 3. That's 5 blades of grass. That's the entire 11. That's what you call compact.
Yeah.
That's what you want. That's a good shape. That's an excellent shape. This is an amazing example. I love this example. I'm gonna
really like
use, can I use this in the future? Is this all right? Can I take this?
Yeah, take whatever you want.
Add it to my catalog.
Yeah, when I went through all the clips, actually, I was like, this is like perfect, because I hit the limit for the videos, so I was so glad that I found an example like this. But yeah, it was perfect.
But what I love is, like, I already have an example like this, and the fact that I haven't said anything to you, and you've gone and found it. Like, how are we finding these things if there's no coaching, no pattern, no plan, no consistency to what we're at least attempting to do?
Yeah.
We don't always execute it the way we want to, but there's definitely a plan in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's like, when it comes to our attacking style of play, we know the reasons why we don't play on the right side as much. We literally went into that a little bit beforehand. It's so difficult to maintain a style of play on both sides when you have limits with your players. We have, 2 central midfielders. When Pogba's not in that central midfield, it's so difficult to execute a style of play consistently when there's players that can't make simple passes. 5 to 10 yard passes. That's not coachable, by the way. If you can't make a 10-yard pass at 28 years old, then you're uncoachable as far as I'm concerned. Honestly,
It's true. Who are you talking about? Guess in the comments. Guess who she's talking about in the comments.
Well, you'll find out. You'll find out when we do the profiles on those players. But I agree. It's a perfect example. A great example. Well done. Really like it.
Right. So what I wanted to discuss actually is something that Bruno does often, and he actually forces players to make bad passes all the time. So with the one with Ruben Diaz past Zinchenko, obviously it wasn't a poor pass to Zinchenko. He doesn't care about poor passes into Zinchenko because, again, wide areas. But you see in this image, so Bruno Fernandes is like, he's in between Kante and, was it Ziyech, number 22? I think it was Ziyech. And Christensen's going to go he's going to play a pass to Kovacic here, and Bruno closes him down really quickly. And you can see the space on the far side where Azpilicueta is. There's so much space here, right? So you're thinking it's going to be a simple pass to Azpilicueta, and what he does is he actually forces Kovacic to play a really bad pass and take Azpilicueta further wide than what he wants to be, and it gives us time to sort of get into a defensive shape because it's so wide. Azpilicueta's got to run after the ball, hope it doesn't get out, try and make sure it doesn't go out of play, control the ball, look up and see how the picture's changed in front of him. And at that point, you see our players actually go into a defensive shape again. And again, the Chelsea-Manchester United game, the 0-0, we actually defended very well in this game. So again, it's an example of how our defensive style of play being executed properly. And it starts from defending and higher up the pitch. And yeah, this is it here. Bruno closes him down quickly because you see it. Christensen's actually, he controls the ball and plays the pass to Kovacic quite quickly. So Bruno Fernandes goes from this position here to this one very quickly. He knows what Christensen's going to do, and he closes it down quickly, and it forces Kovacic to make a poor pass. As you can see it, look at the space that he has to pass into. There's so much space, and he still forces a poor pass. So yeah, Bruno Fernandes doing Bruno things again. And this one really made me laugh because on Y Scout there is a aggressiveness sort of section, and we know Bruno's aggressive. And in this Chelsea game, there were so many videos of Bruno closing down Chelsea players and forcing them to pass back to the keeper constantly throughout the game. It's really funny. Like every time Kante picked up the ball, Kante's not great on the ball. Bruno knows this, closes down Kante. Kante sort of panics. He won't play the ball inside to the number 19, which I believe is Mount, right? I think it's Mount. But it's not a difficult pass because he's on his right foot, by the way, Kante. But Bruno's closing it down so quickly, he actually forces him to play him back to the keeper. Again, gets us in our defensive position. We know what to do there. And they're forced to start again. And Bruno does this a lot to a lot of teams, not just Chelsea or Manchester City. He does it on a regular basis. Again, really important to the team when we're defending. This image here is why people get frustrated with Bruno. So Bruno's pressing really far up. You can see there's a huge gap here between him and Marcus Rashford. This is the Sheffield United game that we lost. I remember correctly. Yeah, it is. So the reason why this is really frustrating is because in this situation, our line is quite deep. And because our line is quite deep, when Bruno Fernandes actually presses really high up the pitch, there's a massive gap between him and the rest of our team, and specifically the midfielders. So when people speak about Bruno pressing too much, lacking discipline, massive gap in the midfield, and we tend to get overrun, it's because of things like this. Bruno doesn't have to actually he doesn't have to commit to this too quickly because they start at the halfway line here and they've passed it back. There's two passes. They pass back to the defender who passes back to the goalkeeper. And Bruno's literally ran from our half to here. So not only is it a waste of energy because Bruno does work hard anyway, it takes a lot out of him. He doesn't get to come back into position quick enough when they blasted the ball up the pitch. So at that point, we're actually outnumbered, which is really, really poor. Poor game management, poor decision making. But sometimes Bruno gets frustrated. We're losing 1-0 here. It's not a coincidence that when we're losing, Bruno tends to make these kind of decisions. Or when we're drawing and things aren't quite going our way, Bruno tends to do this quite a bit. So I wouldn't say he loses his head. I guess you could say that. But sometimes he doesn't think about what he's doing in situations where we don't look so good. We're not playing so well. We're losing, drawing. We're 0-0 when we really want a goal. Sometimes he gets a little bit frustrated and it does affect him on the pitch, which is something that he does need to sort out because this is not something that's acceptable when you're older. When you're older, when you're in your prime years, this sort of thing shouldn't be happening. You need to sometimes maintain your energy. But sometimes he works so hard, and we've seen recently, like at times he looks a bit burnt out, and he's still doing this, by the way. Even when you can see that he's exhausted, he's still making these movements. He's still running. He's still pressing. He's still wasting a lot of energy. This is something that he has to have like energy management. Basically, he needs to work on this because Wayne Rooney used to do. Do you remember Wayne Rooney used to do this for us? And sometimes
Rooney would do that the other way in the left back position from the striking position.
Yeah, he would do it constantly. And like I think Thierry Henry was the one who said, sometimes conserve your energy, be a bit more selfish so that you can be more of a threat in the forward areas. But Bruno needs to do this in general. He runs everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. And sometimes just conserve your energy, basically. He needs better energy management. So, yeah, I don't know if you guys want to add anything to this, but... Yeah.
No, it just speaks to his loose, wild nature. He's a madman. This just... You could argue, should the team go with him? But it's like, no. Like, if they've gone all the way back to the goalkeeper, as you said, just have that discipline. Control yourself, keep your composure, get back in shape. Because like you said, I don't know who the striker was, but what is the striker supposed to become the third midfielder now when that ball goes up? Like, he's actually put the team in a bad position there.
Yeah, but do you know what else it is as well? Because he's sprinting towards the defender, it's forcing the defender to make decisions quickly. If you want to come up the pitch as a team, sometimes letting the opposition have the ball and slow the play down a little bit can let your team go up the pitch. Because he's rushing them, he's forcing them back and then back again, and then the goalkeeper blasts it up the pitch. And the reason why the goalkeeper can blast up the pitch is because their players are already set in our half. Do you see what I mean? So that kind of thing there, it's poor decision making. It's poor, but his intentions are good. But sometimes it's just, Bruno, calm down a little bit, And yeah, it is very frustrating. And this is, yeah.
No, I'm just going to say it was fine. I can't remember what game it was now, but there was a game where Bruno was really, really frustrated and the opposition had a throw-in. because you can hear the coaches from the touchline now. One of them had to tell him Bruno behind the ball because like he was getting ready to press, so he was already ahead of the ball. He was ahead of the ball from the throw-in, and the coach had to tell him, "Calm down, get behind the ball, let the throw-in come in, and then you can press Bruno."
Yeah, but you know what it is? Unfortunately, with our fans, especially the ones that don't particularly like Bruno, they'll see this and they'll use it against him as a stick to beat with for like the rest of his career at Manchester United.
That's fine.
And I
What
know
you're
what I'm
doing
saying. It's
here,
constant. It's
you're
constant.
giving people, those who are objective and actually make their decisions based on information they're given. You're giving them good information to make it like that's what it is. You're giving them good information and objective information because you've presented how his pressing is effective for the team. This is just the other side of it, which for me, on balance, is like a small issue in his game because again, he does more effective work and helps the team because he presses well more often than he does this. But this can happen when, like you said, look, we're 1-0 down. He's got a bit frustrated, etc., etc. So
Exactly.
let's not worry about about those people. Let's not worry about those people.
Yeah, this is basically the end of our presentation in terms of what Bruno brings to the team, his strengths, his weaknesses.
Can we go back to free? I was going to say go back to the free. Free.
Yeah.
No, great presentation. I
That was
really enjoyed
amazing.
That was really good. If anybody has any questions, any comments, put them in the comments, or you can tweet us. Any of us, actually, all of our socials are in the description below. Any players you want us to talk about next, please tweet us again, DM us, put it in the comments.
It's going to be McFred, isn't it?
Is it going to be Fred?
This is one presentation. It's McFred.
I want something that's going to have balance because Fred, we'll get to like one or two positives and it's just going to be all negative. Let's be honest.
No, we'll throw the positives in the middle, and then that way we'll be all right. There are positives to Fred's game, Danny.
Stretch them out.
There are positives to his game. But
I won't have a shooting category for him.
No, we have to. We have to have a shooting category.
Put the picture of Ollie going like, "Well done, mate."
Yeah,
that's going to be the first image. The first image will be that one.
That might be the thumbnail. But listen, people, thank you very much for tuning in. We will continue to do this with players. We're also going to do a tactical breakdown. We're going to talk about our defensive shape, things like set pieces, because they're a bit of a problem for us lately. Please go follow us on the socials. Please subscribe to the channel, like the videos. Let us know what you want to see next, and keep in touch.